This examination can be found in an 1835 book created for schools and academies in the United States. The link will be in the description so you can come and view this for yourself. There is a longer version of this video which covers all the Tartaria related topics found in this book, but I decided to cut it into smaller sections so it's easier to focus on. Now we've come to Tartary in general, and we're going to examine the questions and the answers given. Question 1. What is Tartary? Describe it. Tartary is a country of vast extent in the middle of Asia, but thinly inhabited and little known. Its surface is in general mountainous, and its soil various, but not very fruitful, except in Great Baccaria, east of the Caspian Sea and towards the south. Question 2. What are the limits of Tartary in its most general sense, and what in its limited or restricted sense? The term and the limits of Tartary are very undefined. Tartary, in its most extensive sense, contains all that vast country of Asia which lies between the frozen ocean to the north and Persia, the kingdom of Kabul, Hindustan and China to the south, and includes a great variety of nations, to each of which is applied the general name of Tartars, but often with a particular one denoting its local situation. In its limited or more restricted sense, Tartary excludes all that part which goes under the general name of Siberia. The question 3 says what are comprised under the general head of Tartary, and question 4 is how otherwise considered. Under the general head of Tartary are comprised Russian Tartary, Chinese Tartary and independent Tartary. A description of Russian Tartary is included in that of Asiatic Russia or Siberia. Chinese Tartary and independent Tartary are described under separate heads. Tartary is sometimes considered under the 3 general heads of Eastern, Western and independent Tartary. Question 5. By what general name were the different tribes who inhabit Eastern Tartary formerly known, and describe them? The different tribes which inhabit Eastern Tartary were formerly called Mongol or Mughal Tartars, a very warlike people who on the one hand conquered Hindustan under Genghis Khan, and on the other subdued China in the 13th century and reigned there for 100 years, till they were expelled in the year 1368. Question 6. How is Chinese Tartary divided? Chinese Tartary, which is separated from China by a great wall, is divided into 2 parts, the Eastern and Western. The greatest part of this country either belongs to the Emperor of China, is tributary to him, or is under his protection. Question 7. What countries does independent Tartary include? Independent Tartary includes all the country between Chinese Tartary and the Caspian Sea, and contains Turkestan, Great Baccaria, Turkomania, Kharazm, and some others of a lesser note. Question 8 is what is Western Tartary, and question 9 says to describe the Tartars. We also have a note here which says what have you to remark upon the name of Tartar? Do the Tartars themselves spell their name the same as we do? What is the difference? Is it of any moment whether we call them Tartars or Tatars? What are your reasons for continuing to call them Tartars in preference to Tatars? Are any names of places spelt by the natives differently from what we spell them, and name them and the cause of this difference? Western Tartary includes the remainder, most or all of which has been conquered by the Russians. Tartars, in general, are a robust people with good constitutions and are capable of undergoing great fatigue. They are very dexterous in handling their sabers and shooting with the bow and arrow. We're now going to read this note. The true name of these people as used by themselves and other Oriental nations is Tatar, but this difference to us is by no means essential. Indeed, for the sake of pronunciation, it is better to write it Tartar, from our having been accustomed so to do. Were this the only varied instance in the spelling the names of places, it would be proper to write Tatar, but when there are many thousands of greater differences, it cannot be worth our notice. Thus, the country by us called Persia is by the natives called Iran, that which we call Tibet is by the Indians named Bhutan, by the Tartars Barantola, and by the Chinese Chang. The great peninsula facing China, which is named by the natives Kaligua, is in the Chinese geography called Chaosian, in that of the Manchus or Eastern Tartars, Solgun Koran, and in ours, Korea. China itself is a name unknown to the Chinese, whose country is called in the systems of their own geography Changhua, or the Middle Kingdom. In those of the Manchu Tartars, Niku Koran. By the Moguls, Kati. Hence the Persians and Arabs call it Kate, and the Russians Kitay. The great river passing through Eastern Tartary and falling into the Gulf of Kamchatka is called by the Mongols who inhabit its banks Onan. By the Manchus, Sagali and Ula. By the Chinese, Heilongjiang. And by the Russians, the Amur. Question 10. To whom in part are the Tartars subject? Many of the different nations or tribes of Tartary are of the same, others of a different origin. Although a considerable portion of this country is called independent, the greater part of the inhabitants are now in a loose state of subjection, either to the Russian, Chinese, and Persian empires, or to the Kingdom of Kabul. Number 11 just asks for the population of Tartary, and it gives the population of independent Tartary at 8 million. But the answer says our information on the subject of the population is very vague. The amount cannot be ascertained, but the inhabitants are by no means in proportion to the extent of the country. Number 12. From whom did the Tartars originally descend? How are they divided? These people originally descend from the Scythians. They are now generally divided into three great powers. The first are those known by the name of Tartars, the second are the Kalmucks, and the third, the Mongols. These Tartars are again subdivided into different tribes or nations, which frequently receive their names from their chiefs. Question 13. Where reside the Tartars properly so called? The Tartars, properly so called, live chiefly to the west, north, and east of the Caspian Sea. The most considerable of these are the Uzbeks, formerly subject to Persia, but now for the most part independent. Question 14 and 15 asks where the Kalmucks are located. The Kalmucks, sometimes called Aleuthes, inhabit the larger half of what is called Western Tartary. Their country is situated to the northeast of the Caspian Sea. These people never cultivate the lands, but rove from place to place in search of pasture for their flocks. They are under the protection of the Russians. The Kalmucks are said to possess many good qualities which give them great superiority over the wandering Tartars, but the Kalmucks and Mongols were formerly considered one nation. Questions 16 and 17. Where are the Mongols? The Mongols inhabit the western part of Chinese Tartary. Their country is bounded on the north by Siberia, on the west by independent Tartary, on the south by the Great Wall of China, and on the east by Manchuria, or Chinese Eastern Tartary. The Mongols were formerly a very celebrated nation, and their conquests at one period were the most rapid and extensive of any people upon record. Question 18 and the final question. What is the language of Tartary? The language of Tartary is very various, but the basis of all is the ancient Scythian. The Manchu, a tribe of Tartars who conquered China in the last century, speak a very copious language, but this differs greatly from that in use by the Mongols, there being scarcely any words alike in the two languages. The Manchus consider their language the most copious in the world. So that was the final question for Tartary in general, and next we'll be moving on to independent Tartary. So that's the end of that section from this 1835 history book, distributed to American schools and academies in the mid-1800s. This is before the Civil War, so pre-Civil War history information about Tartary and its inhabitants. Make sure you check out the other sections if you're interested, or watch the whole video if you want to see them all in one place.